Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Pints and Perspectives, a podcast hosted by WellHouse Church, where we believe that there's a plethora of theological perspectives and plenty of beer to go around.
Oh, we're recording? I didn't know we were. Man, I'm so thankful for those red lights because clearly you didn't want to say anything about it. So I could have had a hot mic moment and said anything, and you would have definitely published it.
No, I never.
Yes,
I never publish our random beginning nonsense.
Just depends on how good it is. Hey, welcome to Pints and Perspectives, plural, because there's more than one.
More than one.
And we might not actually drink pints, but we certainly got lots of perspectives.
And I have a pint today.
You actually, yeah, look at that. What's up?
Hey man, it's a good day. It's a good day.
I'm tired. I'm a little fatigued, a little low energy. Yeah. I apologize to the viewers.
It's been a hot week. This is the week of the tornado.
The tornado. That's right. Deer Park, Pasadena. Shout out Baytown. All y'all down there. Yep. I saw a report though that there were no injuries. I mean, lots of devastation in terms of property damage, but
I find that real hard to believe because
it was toe up from the flow up.
Well, and the heart of the damage was actually done to a nursing home, like an in-resident senior living facility in Deer Park, Pasadena area. And actually one of the lawyers that works on my floor, his wife works there.
Oh, goodness. Was she okay?
She actually went home early with a migraine or something. And so she was safe. And I think everyone ended up overall being largely safe, but there's no way to, determine how that might impact an elderly person that's in a assisted living facility.
Yeah. It's, why would a good God allow something so terrible to happen?
That is what we're going to talk about today. Hence the reason I brought it
up.
Because if you're
plot line.
Well, if you're in the insurance business, you know that they call these acts of God.
Yeah, that's right. Because who else is responsible for it? But wait, we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's drink. All right, look. So Cullen said, "What beer do you want?" I started looking around. There's some freaking coffee beer. Don't put coffee in beer. Look, I know there's a market for it. It's not me. And then I noticed this beautiful, beautiful beer. It is a New Belgium triple Belgian style ale. I love Belgian styles. They have their place. They're usually very malty, and they have a very unique yeast flavor. That's about all I know about them. And normally they're pretty boozy, but this one's only 8.5%. New Belgium is a staple. There's, we talk about Fat Tire on this podcast frequently, so I'm looking forward to it.
Shout out about Fat Tire. When I was in Kroger today buying beer, they changed the look.
Well, right. We talked about this on the last podcast.
No, they changed it again.
Again? Yeah, well, I can tell this is a new cap for...
Anyway. So the thing about Belgian-style ales that I think is funny is, my family lived in Belgium. My dad for 2 years. My mom for a year.
That's where Clayton was born.
No, that's where Clayton did.
Just kidding.
Clayton did spend his senior year of high school there, though.
That's cool.
Pretty cool story. Anyways, the story on these are you can have doubles, triples, and quads. And it's all from an ancient tradition of Belgian brewing, and it's all about the technique or length. I can't remember exactly the specifics, but they go and there's just, the regular beer, and then there's the double, the triple, or the double, the triple, and then the quad. And Belgian beer brew... Belgium is the brewing capital of the world. There is more beer brewed per capita in Belgium than any other country in the world.
Interesting.
And its history goes all the way back to monks and Trappist brewing.
So Trappist ale is a thing too.
Yep. And I have something that Adam brought from his neighborhood. This is from Great Heights Brewing.
Goof. That's what we call ourselves. We think we're really cool. It's really just a gentrified white utopia. Yeah. I inherited in.
That is white privilege.
I was also born in the neighborhood, so I'm a legacy. Great Heights Brewing, which is on Wakefield. I used to live on Wakefield. They're a great brewery, locally owned. And so what's the name of that beer, Cullen?
It's the Blue Tile IPA.
Yeah. So that's an ode to...
It's a pool tile, right?
Nope, to the neighborhood. So in the Garden Oaks Oak Forest area, on the curbs at the ends of the blocks, the street names, like when the developments were first built, because they were like planned community. I don't know if planned communities is the right word. I think that's a technical term. Anyways, long story short, on the curbs, the streets were written in tile, like little mosaics, blue on white, and so it's a nod to the neighborhood. Goof.
Hey, I dig it. It's 6.6 ABV.
I'm interested to see what you think about it. I've had it many times.
Well, cheers.
So, cheers, my guy. Mm-hmm.
Oh.
You go first.
It has a little more malt than I expected it to have.
Okay.
I like it a lot. It's
not the best IPA in the world.
No, but the thing that it feels really balanced for what it is.
I feel like it's a little light, honestly, for an IPA. I want it a little heavier. I think
you want some more body to it?
I want some more body to it. That's my review of it.
Yeah.
But the hops is great. Really, I don't know what kind of hops they use. It might be on the can somewhere, but it the bitter is good.
Yeah, it's I was actually gonna say I think it's a little light on the hops.
Oh, okay. All right.
But that's why I was saying I think it's good for what it is.
Yeah.
And when it's a lighter hopped IPA, I think it's nice to balance it out a little bit, and I think they do a pretty good job of that. I mean,
it's a good drinking IPA.
Yeah, I think I'm somewhere in like the 7.4. Like it's a good middle of the road IPA. I probably wouldn't. Like I would probably if I was going to buy a 6-pack, there are probably other IPAs I'd go for.
Well, you can stop by the brewery, which is down the street, and you can buy multiple 6-packs. This triple, what is it about Belgian style ales? They just have they are a flavor. I guess it's the yeast is different or whatever. Brettanomyces or some kind of yeast.
It's absolutely the yeast, because that is one thing that Europe does really well that America does not do well.
There's so much flavor.
Is Europe uses different kinds of yeast, and yeast is a very carefully thought out ingredient.
Well, it's alive.
Correct. Whereas over here, we don't really treat yeast like that.
Typical Americans.
Well, we do hops and malt.
Ah, right. Interesting.
We've just taken a different kind of approach to how we do the specialties.
Interesting. Okay, yeah. Well, excellent beer. I'm always a big fan. It is a little bit, I don't know what word to use. It's a little, I don't know, guys. I should read it like a how to sommelier beer. I want a little bit more flavor. It's a little bit lacking for me. I want a little bit more bite to it. I want a little bit more complexity to it. I think it's 8%. Yeah, I don't know. So I'm gonna give it a 6.
That's about right. Triples are not actually my favorite.
You like that quads? What's the one with the elephant on it? It's delirium, but that's like. Anyways,
I'm not familiar.
We'll get one for the show.
Okay. All right.
Cullen?
Yes, sir.
Why do bad things happen to good people? And if there is a good and loving God, why doesn't he stop it?
This is the question.
The question, dude. I did a little bit. I'm coming on this evening to Pints and Perspectives to say that I'm having a little bit of existential crisis.
Oh,
look, man. Well, I don't know. You set it up. You set up the series, and then I'll banter.
Well, okay. So, what we want to do is we want to have a series through this discussion, and like any time we approach a topic, I want to do it different. I don't want to approach it the same old way. I mean, I could get on some, quick introductory, all the philosophical elements. I could track you through the history of
3
the problem
points
of
in a
evil.
poem.
I could talk about Christus Victor, atonement. Like, I could do all of it and build you this big course on the problem of evil. Or we could take all of those elements and we could approach this from different viewpoints or perspectives. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to have an introductory episode to the conversation today. And then over the next 3 weeks, we're going to have a conversation about the problem of evil, but we're going to view it from the perspective of God, from the perspective of Satan,
Satan,
the adversary.
Yes.
What we say is,
the devil.
Yep. And
enemy.
then we're going to look at it from the perspective of a human.
Okay.
Now, why are you in an existential crisis about this?
So I started doing a little bit of work just to prep for the show, and I so I went back to 2 trusty old sources.
Ooh.
Tom Wright.
Evil and the Justice of God.
Well, no. I mean, yes, I did pull that book off the shelf and I did thumb through, but I actually so there's this podcast series out there in the world. I don't know if they're still producing, but it's called Ask NT Wright Anything. And it's just topical.
They are still alive and well.
Okay, so there's 30-minute episodes.
Well, they're also there's NT Wright Online and
it's an offshoot of NT Wright Online. It's like a marketing ploy for NT Wright Online. Anyways, okay. So I remembered that he had done a really good episode on it, and in it he does a little summary of basically the thesis of that book. And so in the back recesses of my brain, I knew that. And so I went and found the podcast and I listened to it.
Got it.
And then the other source was William Lane Craig.
Oh, philosophical theology.
Philosophical apologist.
Yep.
Maybe perhaps the most famous living apologist.
Oh yeah, he is the guy.
Yeah.
If you want his vein of voice, he is the premier person to represent that perspective.
So, and also taught for a while at
our alma mater.
But yeah, so I
think he still does.
Maybe he does. Yeah, I don't know.
He's like a visiting professor.
So I also just found a talk on him, just refuting the problem of evil. An atheist. How did he say it? So basically, he's he says that's the linchpin for atheist arguments against God is the majority of them are all rooted in the problem of evil. And so here's how to refute the problem of evil. So I listened to his setup on it, right? So all that to say, and we can get into those different things and what I thought and what bothered me. But the existential crisis is, I think, man, okay, so one of the arguments that Craig makes is that when asking this question, so look, I'll set up my existential crisis and then we'll circle back around. But
I wish he'd just do something.
But when you ask the question, how can a good God allow suffering to occur? Because the problem of evil is also the problem of suffering. It goes by many names. How that the person asking that question has to defend that question rather than the Christian, the believer who believes in a good God, and believes that is possible, and they don't have to actually defend that. Do you have thoughts on this? It was his way out of it.
Yes. Well, and this is my complaint with William Lane Craig. We should not be having this conversation for the sole purpose of trying to convince atheists that they're wrong.
Okay, so motivation. Let's talk about motivation.
Yeah, if that's the motivation of this conversation,
that's definitely his motivation.
You've approached it wrong.
Okay, yeah, that's his starting
You have
point.
a flawed foundation of what you're trying to do.
Yeah, right. He's trying to win an argument.
Which that's never going to be good, because might I remind everyone that arguments in the way that we have framed them in our metaphorical construct, argument is a war. It's a battle that I'm having with someone else.
Yeah. That's
not the approach that I think is helpful to a conversation about why a omnibenevolent God allows suffering when the voice of the benevolent is a belligerent person trying to win an argument. I think all of it sets up a flawed foundation.
Okay.
So that's how I feel about it. His is a non-answer.
So the second place he goes to, I'm getting to my existential crisis here. The second place he goes to is the majority of people who have lost their faith in God because of the problem of evil, which we will still define this in a minute. The majority of people that have that problem, that lose their faith, is because they are having they're asking an emotional question, not an intellectually honest question. That it is fueled by their emotions. And what he means by it is it's fueled by their personal experience. Something tragic happens to them. He actually tells some really horrific stories about these terrible things that happen to kids to prove that like evil exists in the world, like suffering exists in the world. But he's like, people have these terrible, tragic experiences and they go, how could God let that happen to me or to this child or to all the people in Deer Park, Texas, right? And so because they can't reconcile the emotions of good and tragic and those going together, then that's why they and I think that's me.
That's a fallacious premises.
Okay, great. So argue with the apologist of our time.
Well, you can't fault someone for having an emotional you can't fault someone for having an emotional response to an experience to get them out of a faith when it's an emotional response experience that got them into that faith.
Oh, okay.
Like you don't get to just change the rules anymore.
Emotions count now, but not now.
Ask Paul. Yeah, of course.
Interesting response. Okay. So we'll get more into that. But the problem of evil goes by multiple names. The problem of suffering. And it's important to point out here that when we talk about the problem of evil, it is not necessarily evil. We're not defining as we're not defining evil as like Satan and demons.
Yeah.
That is part of it.
Well, okay.
But we're also talking about tornadoes.
Well, and we need to have a conversation about this, because this conversation that has evolved over thousands of years about the problem of evil and been approached from a myriad of different perspectives. I mean, one of the things that everybody has to understand and has been presented here today because of your reference to William Lane Craig is that philosophy is always been. It is, has been, and always will be theology's main conversation.
Right. We've said this before.
Yeah. And so because of that, philosophy is this interesting thing where it's the free thought of university.
Yeah.
Scholarly university, which if you look through history, the greatest revolutions, the most progressive movements all began at the college university level. Because that's where people are researching, that's where people are expanding, that's where people are doing critical thinking.
Oh, that's where they get radicalized into wokeness.
Yes.
And CRT.
Yes.
Yeah, got it.
And it's always been that way. University always liberalizes people.
It's true.
Just how it works.
It's true. Interesting that education and critical thinking skills makes... Anyways, we're not talking politics right now. Go ahead.
I say all of that to say that with that, philosophy becomes this interesting thing where it becomes the driver of the academic culture conversation with theology.
Sure.
And so this kind of came to a head with Thomas Aquinas, right? He is the philosophical theologian of the Middle Ages that like puts all of this on the map in like, the 13th century or something. When that happens, this conversation about how we define evil in the conversation of the problem of evil has changed throughout history.
Yeah.
We are viewing that quite different than today than they were in the year 300.
Yeah.
Right? That evil is a moving target.
Yeah.
So no, I definitely don't just mean Satan and demons.
Yeah. So what are we talking about then?
What do you think we're talking about?
Yeah, so I think it is a natural theology question. It's a philosophical natural theology question. I'm not talking about evil in a spiritual sense. When I talk about my hang up with the problem of evil, I mean it in a natural theological categorical sense. Tornado rips through Joplin, Missouri, and kills all these things. 19 people die in Uvalde, in the elementary school in Uvalde, Texas. You mean evil in a tangible way?
Bad
things happening.
Yeah, that's what I mean too.
Right.
Now, very real, bad, hard things.
Sure. Now, theologically, you could ascribe all those to like Satan, but that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about suffering. We're talking about disease. We're talking about war. We're talking about
poverty,
injustice. Hunger. Injustice is a massive one. Hunger, houselessness, name them all. Trafficking. I work in child welfare. I see it every day, right? If there is an all-powerful, all-knowing, and all-loving, all-good God, who is the creator, the first and the last, the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. How can, let's see, is it possible for an omni God who is all loving to also allow suffering and tragedy and injustice occur in the creation they created? How do you reconcile those things? That is what I mean by the problem of evil.
That's what everybody means by the problem of evil.
Right. I'm just defining. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
This is not a spiritual warfare conversation.
No. This is certainly not that. This is a very real question of why are people in the world experiencing death, harm, injury,
the Holocaust.
Yeah.
If there's a good
This
God,
is a great one.
If there's a good God, and we know that there are good Jesus-loving Christians in 1928 Germany, then why do we get to 6 million massacred Jews who are people of Yahweh God?
Yeah.
Right? Like how does that happen?
Right.
Now, go ahead.
Go.
So like the response is, this is what, okay, you know what N.T. Wright's response is? Mystery. There's just some things that we cannot know because God, it ain't us and we ain't God. And he has ways that aren't our ways. And we can argue all the philosophical, we can William Lane Craig the heck out of it, but truth be told, there's some other stuff that Wright says if we want to get into it, but that I thought was really interesting. He said that the atheist, I'll just do it. He said that the atheist the atheist is not worried about the problem of evil. The atheist just goes ahead and says evil is. The atheist has a problem of good. The atheist has to prove why people do good things, not figure out why they do bad things.
He's not wrong.
It is compelling. Existential crisis happening over here. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I'm diving into it.
Yeah. Well, I think so. People deal with it lots of different ways. I mean, you can deal with it. Well, people do loopholes and runarounds to try to find some explanation of it that fits within their construct that they have about God. And there's plenty of them that we'll get into over the series. But what you have to understand is that all of these moves that people make, you could chart on a linear axis. And on one side, it's going to be God's ultimate power. And then on the other side, it's going to be God's most limited power.
Yeah.
And it's a spectrum across there. And each of these are going to fall somewhere on that spectrum because you only deal with the problem of evil by strengthening God's power and understanding and presence in the world. This would be like a really reformed understanding of God. And
super like hyper-determinist.
Yeah, like really providential.
Yeah.
Which also puts God on the hook.
He's the author of evil, man.
Yeah, it puts God on the hook for a lot of that evil experience.
Exactly, yeah.
And then on the other side, you lessen God's power and you let God off the hook for evil, but you also lessen God's power, which can lead some people to have what has been called a Gumby God.
What? I don't know this term.
Oh, yes. A God that is the not powerful God that is just
a piece of clay
that's just along for the ride, just there in your passenger seat. And so it can, for some people, can create the Gumby God as a pejorative term.
Sure.
But what they're trying to say is that if a God has no power, why are you asking that God to do anything? Why do you need that God if they don't have power to do something?
Yeah, so if you keep riding the train down that track, you end up in atheism.
Well, you just end up in agnosticism. You're just like, okay, if it's there, I don't.
Right.
Yeah, And so this spectrum is what we will run the gambit of through this series, because we'll go all the way from God having like damn near no power. Mm-hmm. And then we will also have some conversations where God is like the grand puppeteer. Mm-hmm. He has ultimate power.
Sounds like a bad God to me.
I would agree, actually.
Yeah.
I would agree that the God that has supreme ultimate power is a bad God.
Yeah. I mean, so what else do we want to do on this episode then? I mean, this is the thing. Like when I work through all the different questions, it always comes back to this. And I do, like, it should be stated that, like, despite the thousands of years of Christian apologetics around this question in particular, it's still a debate.
Oh, this was my hang up too.
Unsettled.
Yeah, this was my hang up, and I would even say it's unsettled for me still. I still wrestle back and forth with some of these things. You're going to hear us talk a lot about open theism or panentheism through this series. Some people in like the philosophical world will call it free will theism. I hate that term.
Well, this is the deal, right? It is definitely connected to the free will of humanity. This question is about the free will of humanity and the sovereignty of God.
Yes, it absolutely is. But the final thing that I think I would want to say in an introductory episode is the reason that this conversation continues to exist. This conversation would have been dead in the water if the Bible stopped at the First Testament.
Okay, say more. Okay, I was going to ask. Okay, go ahead. Wait, go ahead.
If the Christian tradition doesn't introduce the New Testament into existence, where Jesus is presented as God, as one with God, is worshiped as God, and that God endures all of the suffering. If that didn't happen, this conversation is dead in the water. We are not having this conversation if that never got introduced into the world. That was a game changer.
Are you saying because the God of the Old Testament is the author of evil?
No, But what I am saying
the cause of suffering.
What I am saying is that in some places, and they are unfortunately some of the most revered stories, in some places of the First Testament, God appears to be this all-powerful, not a care in the world kind of God. Mm-hmm. One that tells their people to go and conquer, to go
commit genocide.
Commit genocide, do the Canaanite conquest. I mean, multiple times.
Do some ethnic cleansing here and there.
Yeah, I mean, story of Noah's Ark, right? I got to attach it on my arm. That's a story where God just cannot deal with the evil that's in the world anymore.
God's a murderer.
And God says, you know what? I'm going to kill them all except Noah and his family.
But then he chills out after Jesus comes to earth. See, this is what we got to get into. We're already into
We'll get more into this, but that character of the First Testament has no business showing up in the New Testament the way they do.
Okay.
And because they show up that way,
maybe it's a different God entirely. We've already established that I'm a heretic.
That move of Jesus and what Jesus endures and conquering of that suffering that he endured.
Yeah.
That's what allows space for this conversation.
I hear you. Yeah. I mean, that's fair. Jesus is the answer.
Yes. Jesus is the answer. Jesus is, well, okay. So on one side, Jesus is the answer. On the other side, Jesus is the smoking gun.
It's smoking hot.
I guess.
How's that for a problem?
Yeah. It's like a hell problem.
Because he went to hell. Remember?
Oh.
He goes down and he hangs out and he releases the bosom or something.
3 days.
And so now he's smoking hot.
He releases the bosom.
Are we done here?
We're done here.
Thanks for listening to the Pints and Perspectives podcast hosted by WellHouse Church. Be sure to give us a rating and a review if you enjoyed the episode. It's free and it helps us immensely. Also, feel free to check out our other podcasts.